Please like, share, and subscribe.
Okay, so nice to be here. This book, Washington Bullets, is a very quick, short, I hope, adrenaline filled journey through the nasty history of US imperialism. I actually wrote this book in a few weeks after the coup d'etat against Evo Morales in 2019. Mr. Morales was sitting in his office. A general of the Bolivian armed forces walked in, told him, "You got to leave, otherwise you'll die." And Evo Morales left his office, went into hiding, eventually went to Mexico, then Argentina. When he was in Argentina, I was in touch with him and I said, "I'm really angry about this." And, I basically spent a few weeks fuming and walking around, taping myself talking about things that I had read over the years. I transcribed a lot of it, and a lot of it is direct transcription from my fuming. For instance, the opening section about what is the cost of a bullet. It's not just the cost of a hotel room, the cost of this, cost of that. It's, in fact, a destructive history left behind in the country and so on. And when the book was done, I sent Evo a Spanish version. He wrote a great introduction for it, and the book came out. And it's actually a conjunctural account because it's based on decades of basically reporting on the crimes of the Central Intelligence Agency and broadly US intelligence around the world, including through interviews with ex-CIA people, most importantly, Chuck Cogan, who was bureau chief in Paris, ran the entire Central Asian operation in the late 1970s and 1980s that included Iran during the revolution, Afghanistan, and so on. And they told me some hair-raising stories. The heart of the book is called a manual for regime change, where I basically take the CIA texts themselves, principally the after action report on the coup in Guatemala, and I reconstruct a 9-point manual of how to overthrow a government based on their own material. This is not me extrapolating anything. This is right there in their material. And the reason I did that is I wanted to show the ubiquity of US interference and coups. A lot of people, after Evo Morales was overthrown, said that, well, it wasn't a coup. He had been there too long, and so on. And I always felt strange reading the New York Times, for instance, the biggest piece of garbage when it comes to reporting the rest of the world. Forget the United States. I wouldn't want to judge it. But when it comes to the rest of the world, New York Times is a piece of garbage. They would allow people to write things like, Evo Morales should go for the sake of democracy. And I'm thinking, you're not Bolivian. Like, how can you speak for the Bolivian people? You're not Bolivian. Like, you're talking in the words of democracy. Like, in the name of democracy, I, an American, think that Evo Morales should leave. Who the hell are you to be giving orders to? Well, of course, you are the imperial center of the world. And that's exactly how you think. I mean, Thomas Friedman has made it an entire career of lecturing people about democracy. Like, man, your own democracy is useless. You don't have a democracy. You have some sort of strange oligarchic system with an anachronistic electoral college. And you're then telling other people how they should run their political system. For God's sake. I mean, Bush versus Gore. The Supreme Court decided the election, not even the population. I mean, and yet you're so the book was written to inform people about the fabric of how US imperialism operates. It's interesting. I know in the last 10 odd years, people have been going around saying, well, there's not one imperialism, there are multiple imperialisms. And I always think, really, we did some calculations. 75% of world military spending is spent by the United States, its NATO allies, and its NATO partners. 75%. The Chinese spend under 10% of world military spending, just under 10%. The Russians, 4% of world military spending. You add the Russians and Chinese up, it's 14%. That's 1 4, 14%. Uh, 14%, and then not even in a military alliance. They have a strategic alliance. Whereas NATO is a real military alliance, a genuine threat to the world. When Chomsky said the United States government is the largest terrorist force in the world, he was not exaggerating. This was not a joke. Now, obviously, it's difficult to convince people who believe in liberalism or who believe in, the great glory of the US Constitution. But let's take the US Constitution for a minute. The US Constitution. If any human being who lives in the United States believes that the values of the United States are the values of the Constitution, you've lost your mind. The values of a country are not the values of its Constitution, but the values of its budget. And the United States spends more than half its budget on the military. That's the values of the United States. That's an imperialist budget. Do you really need 900 military bases around the world? Do you really have to interfere in every single election in countries that you don't like? I mean, is it really necessary? What did the United States get out of the war in Afghanistan? At the end, they got the Taliban back. What did the United States get from trying to overthrow the Syrian government? Nothing. The government is still standing. What did the United States get for overthrowing Saddam Hussein in Iraq? And I'm not saying he's a great guy, but what did the United States get? It got a strengthened Iran, and it got a strengthened Afghanistan. The Taliban was thrilled that the Saddam was overthrown. The United States, in fact, gave a gift to Iran between 2001 2003. It got rid of its two adversaries, the Taliban and Saddam Hussein. I mean, what does US intervention get? It often gets the exact opposite of what the great leaders in Washington say. So this book was effectively written to show people the granular nature, the details of how these things happen, and inclusive of the fact that it is partly about the kind of, let's say, the propaganda of the US media. 2 years ago, the New York Times ran an article in which it accused me personally and the institute I run of being in the pocket of the Chinese government, which is a curious business, because the reporter who sent me the questions, long questionnaire, he didn't ask me a question. He asked me to deny things like, do you deny that you receive money from the Chinese government? Do you deny that you have worked for this? I mean, what was that? Like, it's like a McCarthyite interrogation. I tore that up and I wrote him an email saying, you should respect the people that you are trying to interview. Like, give me some respect, man. I mean, I'm in my 50s. I've been at this game a long time. You want to know about my institute and its funding? Talk to them. But no, they want to basically slander you. That's the nature of imperialist disinformation. And the cleverest thing they've done is to say that everybody who they don't agree with is a purveyor of disinformation. So, for instance, I'm saying to you now that 75% of world military spending is the United States, its NATO partners, and the NATO bloc itself. And they will come back and say that's disinformation. How is that disinformation? It's your own submission that this is how much you spend on the military. But they will like to shoot the messenger rather than debate the message. That's part of what we call the hybrid war, or that's part of their manual for regime change. It's to delegitimize critics, call them all kinds of names. And I'm sorry to say, a lot of people get scared by this, and they get silenced by this. You have to have either skin made of God knows what, rubber or something, or you just are like a crazy person. I'll end with this, guys. When I was working with Chomsky on the book, The Withdrawal, I asked him one day, Noam, you're an old man. All these years, you've been attacked by the US media. You've never been published in many of the periodicals. New York Times published him once, subsequently on artificial intelligence. Nothing to do with foreign policy. You never get published in the Boston Globe. You're never on National Public Radio, and so on. And I said, how do you tolerate all the attacks against you? And his answer to me was priceless, completely classic Noam Chomsky. His answer was, because I'm arrogant. But of course, we can't be arrogant people. We have to be good-natured, good people. We have to take the brickbats. Why? Because we believe in something. We believe that imperialism is a scourge. It's destroying the planet. It's not allowing us to advance the needs of humanity. We can't allow imperialism to dictate the terms of how we want to live on the planet Earth. We have to have comrades to give us bravery to confront some of this stuff. Why am I happy to be with you? Because I feel that we will be comrades together, that we will give each other strength in battling one of the worst forces that has emerged in the world, which is US imperialism.